When Donald Trump refuses to speak, it's never a sign of indifference. It's a signal. And this time, his silence is echoing across the Atlantic, louder than any press release or policy paper. Since returning to the White House, Trump hasn't called or met with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Not once. Not even after announcing a sweeping 20% tariff threat on European goods in March 2025. In a world where a handshake can prevent a crisis, Trump's silence has become a diplomatic earthquake. The stakes? Monumental. In 2023, the total transatlantic trade in goods and services exceeded $1.3 trillion. According to the European Commission, the EU exported $503 billion, roughly $550 billion, in goods to the U.S., while it imported $347 billion, about $378 billion, from the U.S. That creates an EU surplus, or from Washington's view, a U.S. goods trade deficit of approximately $208 dues. $7 billion according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Yet, the only number Trump talks about is that $263 billion. That deficit has become his justification for targeting European automakers, steel producers, and luxury brands with punitive tariffs. Back in 2018, he did the same thing, hitting the EU with steel and aluminum tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, citing national security. The result? The EU retaliated with 25% tariffs on $3 billion worth of American exports, including Harley-Davidsons and Kentucky bourbon. The IMF estimated that the 2018-2019 trade tensions shaved 0.3% off global GDP growth. Fast forward to 2025, Trump's tactics haven't changed, but the global economy has. Supply chains are more fragile, inflation is more volatile, and central banks can't afford another shock. Yet instead of cooling tensions, Trump has thrown gasoline on the fire. He's now offering Europe a deal with a 90-day countdown clock attached. Either the EU agrees to his terms or the 20% tariffs go into full effect. But here's the twist. He's not negotiating with the only person who can actually make that deal. Ursula von der Leyen is the head of the European Commission, the only EU institution with legal authority to negotiate trade agreements on behalf of all 27 member states. And under EU law, no individual country, neither Germany nor Italy nor France, can make side deals. Yet Trump is bypassing her entirely, choosing instead to speak with national leaders like Giorgia Meloni of Italy, who herself admitted, "I cannot negotiate on behalf of the EU." This is classic Trump, divide and conquer, pretend the EU is just a collection of weak individual nations and strong-arm them one by one. But Europe isn't falling for it yet. Behind the scenes, EU Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič has been scrambling to keep talks alive. He's held several rounds of negotiations with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. The EU has proposed a zero-for-zero agreement, eliminating all tariffs on industrial goods, an idea first floated in 2018. Trump rejected it then. Now he's ignoring it completely. And while trade negotiators struggle behind closed doors, another battlefront is exploding in public: digital regulation. In 2024, the EU implemented the Digital Markets Act, DMA, and Digital Services Act, DSA, groundbreaking laws meant to rein in tech monopolies. Under these rules, the EU has launched investigations into Meta, Apple, Google, and X, formerly Twitter. Potential fines reach up to 10% of global annual revenue, meaning Meta alone could face penalties of over $11 billion. Trump's allies are furious. Former White House advisor Peter Navarro has called it a legal war on America. The Trump team sees these investigations not as regulatory enforcement, but as economic sabotage. This is where trade and tech collide. Sources inside the European Commission say the U.S. is pressuring Brussels to drop or water down digital enforcement as part of the broader trade deal. But von der Leyen's team insists digital regulation is not up for negotiation. That red line may prove fatal to any deal. And there's another problem: Trump's unpredictability. Even if von der Leyen gets the long-awaited call, what happens next is anyone's guess. In his first term, Trump agreed to G7 climate language, then withdrew hours later. He praised NATO, then questioned Article 5. He promised no tariffs, then imposed them overnight. One tweet from Trump can wipe out months of progress. With the 90-day clock ticking and no signs of a breakthrough, Brussels is bracing for impact. If no agreement is reached by the deadline, estimates from the Kiel Institute suggest that new U.S. tariffs could reduce EU exports by $47 billion annually and slash 0.2 to 0.3% off EU GDP in the first year. This isn't just a trade spat, it's an ideological showdown between multilateral governance and unilateral power. Trump's silence is a message, and the EU's clock is running out. But beneath the surface, this silence hides a deeper strategy that could reshape global economic alliances. At first, no one saw it coming. The first quarter of 2025 began with soaring optimism. Tech stocks surged, economic indicators flashed green. Wall Street pundits hailed the Trump boom 2.0. But beneath the surface, America's wealthiest corporate insiders were making their moves, quietly, precisely, and with ruthless timing. While everyday investors were being told to buy the dip, Mark Zuckerberg, Jamie Dimon, and Safra Catz were already out, selling billions in stock just before the bottom fell out. What triggered the collapse was no mystery. On February 20th, Trump announced a sweeping expansion of tariffs, targeting everything from semiconductors to smartphones, steel to electric vehicles. He claimed it was about protecting American jobs and ending our dependence on foreign powers. But almost immediately, the market panicked. Supply chains groaned under the weight of new costs. Importers passed on the burden to consumers. Inflation ticked upward, and the Dow Jones hemorrhaged over 850 points in just 24 hours. Retirement accounts were gutted. Consumer confidence plummeted. But the elite? They were safe, because they had already sold. Zuckerberg alone dumped over $733 million worth of Meta stock in January and February, when shares were trading at historic highs. His philanthropic foundation made the trades through a 10b5-1 plan set months earlier, but the timing couldn't have been more convenient. On February 14th, Meta stock peaked at $736 per share. Just weeks later, it had dropped over 32%. Coincidence or foresight? Jamie Dimon, the face of J. Morgan Chase and America's most iconic banker, sold over $250 million in stock, most of it just 2 days after J.P. Morgan hit its yearly high. Safra Catz of Oracle offloaded $705 million in shares in January. Oracle stock has since plummeted by more than 30%. These weren't isolated moves. They were coordinated retreats, timed to perfection, executed as America sleepwalked into a tariff-fueled crisis. All of this unfolded while Trump was promising an economic revival. "We're going to make America rich again," he declared, standing beside a banner that read Liberation Day, April 2nd. But his version of liberation came with a steep cost. Tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, and the EU triggered immediate retaliation. American exporters were slammed. Retailers were hit with surging costs. Manufacturing slowed. The very industries Trump claimed to defend, steel, autos, electronics, were now bleeding jobs and profits. And yet, as the economy stumbled, the media remained silent about the sell-off. There were no headlines about the billionaire exodus. No breaking news on CNBC about Zuckerberg's $733 million liquidation. Instead, we got memes, celebrity drama, and cheap political theater. The truth that America's elite had jumped ship before the storm was buried under layers of distraction. But this wasn't just a lucky escape. It was a warning sign, a signal that those closest to power, those with access to internal briefings, economic forecasts, and privileged insights, knew exactly what was coming. They saw the trade war. They read the memos, they cashed out, and the rest of us, we were left holding the bag. It gets worse. While these insiders bailed, the administration doubled down on its rhetoric. Trump called the tariffs a tax cut for the American people. His spokeswoman insisted with a straight face that tariffs don't raise prices, but the data says otherwise. According to the American Enterprise Institute, 98% of Trump's China tariffs are paid by U.S. consumers and businesses. Since the new tariff wave began, core inflation has risen 5.2% year over year. Small businesses are cutting staff. Major automakers like GM and Ford have warned of production slowdowns, and the Fed now places the likelihood of a 2025 recession at 65%. So, who wins? Not the workers Trump promised to protect. Not the families now paying more for gas, groceries, and rent. The winners are the same as always, those who knew when to exit. Nikesh Arora, CEO of Palo Alto Networks, quietly sold $565 million in stock. Chuck Davis of Stone Point Capital unloaded $400 million. Palantir's Stephen Cohen walked away with $347 million. They didn't panic. They prepared. This is not just insider trading. It's insider economics. A rigged game where the rich set the rules, and the rest of us play blindfolded. Where tariffs are weaponized not for patriotism, but for profit. Where America first means America pays while billionaires protect their portfolios. And yet, no one is being held accountable. No investigations, no congressional hearings, no calls for reform. Because in today's America, collapse is just another opportunity for those who already own everything. So the next time you hear about tariffs, remember this. It's not about jobs, it's not about China. It's not even about national security. It's about money, power, timing, and the quiet clicks of sell orders placed long before the news broke. While America braced for impact, the elites were already gone. But that was only the beginning. What came next would shake the foundation of the global economy.
To Donald Trump's trade war now, and China has called on the United States to cancel all tariffs.
I think that we will make a deal with China.
In an unprecedented move that has sent ripples through global markets, China's ambassador to the U.S., Xie, has issued a stark warning. He urged the United States to cease its economic saber-rattling, cautioning that both nations could face devastating consequences if they continue down this path. Is the world witnessing the dawn of a new global economic order, or is it teetering on the edge of a fiscal meltdown? A crossfire of tariffs now defines the diplomatic landscape between these two economic giants. Both nations are locked in an escalating trade war, each side imposing tariffs soaring beyond 100% on each other's goods. In his bold address in Washington on Saturday, April 19, 2025, Xie delivered a message that resonated far beyond Capitol Hill. He drew parallels to protectionist policies from the Great Depression, warning a trade war would destroy the global economy, a chilling echo of a past many hoped would never repeat. The stakes are perilously high. The spiraling conflict has already resulted in severe restrictions on trade, investment, and even cultural exchanges between these former allies. Countries worldwide are holding their breath as the implications of this conflict become ever clearer. At the heart of the matter lies a seemingly unbridgeable economic gulf. The U.S., under the Trump administration, has recently unveiled tariffs as steep as 245% on Chinese imports, ostensibly to protect American interests. In retaliation, China has hit back with duties of up to 125% on American goods, taking their grievances to the World Trade Organization's doorstep. Caught in this battle of wills are businesses and consumers from both sides, who now face higher costs and limited access to essential goods. In a recent public appearance, Xie reached for the wisdom of ancient Chinese medicine, stating, "A good traditional Chinese medicine recipe usually combines many different ingredients which reinforce one another and creates the best medical effect." His analogy was clear. Cooperation, not confrontation, should be the guiding principle. But will this prescription be heeded amid such intense rivalries? Former President Donald Trump offered a different yet vague narrative, claiming ongoing nice conversations with China. "It's like really very good," he remarked cryptically, but details of these talks remain scant. The uncertainty only fuels the tension, as businesses on both sides of the Pacific grapple with the potential fallout. The current clash raises critical questions about the future of international trade. Could a full-blown trade war between these two powers stifle global economic growth? Or is there an opportunity for a breakthrough that could reset international commerce norms for decades to come? Xie sentiments are clear. The Earth is big enough to accommodate both China and the U.S. We should pursue peaceful coexistence rather than collide head-on, and help each other succeed rather than get caught in a lose-lose scenario. Yet, the friction over economic strategies isn't limited to tariffs alone. China's top shipbuilding association has vehemently criticized a proposed U.S. plan that would implement port fees targeting Chinese-linked ships. It's just another front in this multifaceted economic showdown that has industry leaders on both sides scrambling for contingencies. In addressing the rising tariffs, Trump acknowledged a potential limit, stating, "At a certain point, I don't want tariffs to go higher because at a certain point you make it where people don't buy." This admission speaks to the delicate balancing act required to maintain economic stability during such turbulent times. What does the future hold for these two global giants? As the clock ticks, the world eagerly watches for signs of a resolution or further escalation. Could diplomacy triumph over discord, or will economic brinkmanship define the next phase of U.S.-China relations? This is a pivotal moment not only for these two nations, but for the global economy at large. The path they choose could very well set the tone for future international relations. Why do you think this complex dance continues between the U.S. and China? Can they find common ground, or will economic conflicts become the new norm?
Canada becoming a natural resource global powerhouse, this country is the fifth largest producer of natural gas in the world.
What if Canada was more independent with a stronger energy sector?
Once hailed as the undisputed king of global energy, the United States is now watching its empire crack, and the collapse is happening faster than anyone imagined. Just 5 years ago, the U.S. was exporting more natural gas than any country in the world. Today, we're on the brink of importing what we used to sell, with gas prices hitting $6 per gallon and 40,000 energy jobs gone like dust in the Texas wind. Let's rewind. In 2019, U.S. liquefied natural gas (LNG) exports reached 5 billion cubic feet per day, surging past Qatar and Australia to claim #1 spot globally. Fast forward to early 2025, and Qatar has taken back the crown, now producing 110 million tons of LNG per year and signing $45 billion worth of long-term supply deals with Germany, Italy, and South Korea. The U.S.? We're struggling to finalize contracts beyond 5 years. European buyers don't want political volatility. They want reliability. And Qatar delivers. Canada isn't sitting back either. Since 2020, while the U.S. dragged its feet on pipeline permits and LNG export infrastructure, Canada greenlit the $40 billion LNG Canada project in British Columbia, now projected to ship 14 million tons per year to Asia starting 2025. And that's just Phase 1. Phase 2 could double that number. Japan, South Korea, and even India are already lining up to buy Canadian gas, bypassing American suppliers entirely. Meanwhile, U.S. production costs are rising fast. Thanks to aging shale fields, and inflation in drilling equipment, the average cost per 1,000 cubic feet of U.S. gas rose from $1.90 in 2020 to over $3.25 in 2024. By contrast, Qatar continues producing below 0.75 per 1,000 cubic feet, thanks to lower-cost offshore extraction and decades of government investment in infrastructure. So while American gas producers fight to break even, Qatar and Canada are reaping record profits. Qatar Energy posted $42.4 billion in profits in 2023, while U.S. shale gas producers like Chesapeake and Range Resources slashed operations and laid off workers to avoid bankruptcy. And the American consumer? We're paying the price. In February 2020, the national average for gasoline was $2.47 per gallon. Today, it's $6.03 in California and above $4.90 nationally, with no relief in sight. Why? Because U.S. supply is shrinking, export contracts are falling behind, and allies who once bought from us are signing 20-year deals with more reliable partners. This isn't just bad business, it's a strategic disaster. The U.S. had every advantage: vast shale reserves, cutting-edge drilling tech, global shipping lanes, and a decade of dominance. But instead of securing that lead, we weaponized tariffs, stalled infrastructure, and played politics with energy policy. Remember 2017? When the Trump administration slapped tariffs on Canadian aluminum and threatened cross-border energy deals, Ottawa responded by diversifying. They invested heavily in LNG export terminals and quietly courted Asian buyers. Now, in 2025, Canada's gas exports to Japan are up 300% since 2020 and growing. Meanwhile, U.S. exports to Asia have dropped nearly 22% in the same period. Qatar saw the writing on the wall, too. They launched the Northfield East Expansion Project in 2021, adding 33 million tons per year in new LNG capacity by 2025. Their deals? Locked in for 15 to 27 years. While U.S. suppliers haggle over 5-year windows, Qatar is planning for the next 3 decades. The final insult? American LNG terminals are running below capacity. According to the EIA, utilization of U.S. LNG facilities dropped from 98% in 2022 to just 76% in 2024, largely because buyers are looking elsewhere. The world doesn't trust us to deliver anymore, and it's not just about gas, it's about leadership. Energy isn't just a commodity, it's power, influence, leverage on the global stage. U.S. It once used energy dominance to lead the world. Today, we can't even lead our own industry. While Qatar and Canada write the future of global energy with steel and strategy, America is stuck in a loop of partisanship and short-sighted policy. We talk about energy independence while quietly preparing to import LNG from the very countries we used to dominate. The numbers don't lie. We've been outplayed, outplanned. And unless there's a radical shift, an actual energy strategy built on investment, innovation, and global trust, we won't just lose this round. We'll lose the entire game. The energy throne is gone, and the world isn't waiting for us to take it back. But this collapse is only part of the story. What comes next could be even worse.